Hi guys, good morning. Welcome to another episode of Clangin and Bangin with Mikey, episode 277. And today, man, we're gonna talk about a whole bunch of things. But first things first, I'm glad that storm wasn't as bad as people made it out to be. Because as you guys who watch my channel, um, we made the national news about a month ago because of how bad the weather was here, right? And but the one thing I wanted to talk about, man, I ran across this post the other night. I have it saved to my phone. I just haven't look who posted it. And they said a lot of people are using therapy talk without going to actual therapy. And I'm like, damn, that makes sense. Because when you think about it, yeah, everybody has this, oh yeah, I would do X, Y, and Z, yada yada yada. And I'm like, okay, if you would, then why aren't you doing it? You know? If that was the case, then why aren't you actually doing what you said what you wanted to do, right? And it's interesting, man, because it's true. Like a lot of people have, oh well, I would do this, I would do that, but it's like I'm like, yo, instead of you just like, why don't you go to therapy? You know, why don't you actually just go to therapy? You know, and because I think me personally, I'm gonna be honest with y'all, man. It's like I got my first therapy session coming up, and I don't know what to expect. I don't know how to feel. I don't know what's gonna come out. I don't, you know, but I think it's important because 2 years ago I lost my I lost my brother, my best friend, um, and in that time frame I started dating this girl, and I didn't know it at the time, but she was who I needed at the time to get through this, right? Um, quick backstory, right? So back in September of 2023, I, I did a bodybuilding show, and I got nationally qualified, which is one of my goals after five, 5 years of doing competitive bodybuilding. Give or take a couple breaks in between because, life got in the way, and it did. I had different things that I wanted to do, and and different avenues of interest that I wanted to explore. So I did all that. So first things first, posted it to my Instagram, my Instagram workout page, and everybody commented on it. And there was this one girl. I didn't know who she was, and she said something. Oh, congratulations, friends! Friend, I'll catch you in the gym. Catch me in the gym? What are you talking about? Because I didn't know who this girl was. Mind you, rewind 4 or 5 years earlier. Um, she was in the gym, during that time frame, and I don't remember talking to her. I don't remember having a conversation with her. I do remember her spazzing out in the middle of the gym. I thought she was spazzing out, but come to find out, she's wearing contacts, and one of her contacts got lost in her eye. So, and so I hopped in I slid in her DMs and I was talking to her. Mind you, I'm trying to figure out who she is. And she mentioned like, oh yeah, me and you, we train at the same gym. I was like, okay, like where do you train at now? Because I don't even see you. And that's when she mentioned back in like 2018, and like mind you, this is 2023. And so that time frame, and it wasn't like she was consistently going to the gym. It was like sporadically, you know. And I didn't know what she did for work. I didn't know, how she made a living. I didn't know nothing at all because like I said, I don't remember talking to her, right? And fast forward, September 23, 2023 happens. We end up talking, and we exchanged numbers sometime in October. And then we started talking every day type of thing, right? And I was kind of standoffish at first. To quote her, I was very asho-ish in the beginning, but for good reason, because I didn't know who she was. I had my guard up for that particular reason. And so when all that popped off, and then months goes by, and mind you, like I said, we're still talking. And she showed up to my house with pastries, and it was funny because earlier that day, she had asked me like, "Oh, what are you what does your brother and your mom want? If I came by." Oh, all you gotta do is just go to Zippy's, just pick up some apples and some donuts. And at that time, we was already talking heavily, right? So I was on like I had already laid on the foundation, the foundation. I was spitting game. I was doing, whatever, right? And I remember like she's asking like, "Oh, what about you? What do you want?" I was like, "I want you. Like, I just want to come kick it with you. I just want you to come kick it with me." And she was like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah." So unbeknownst to me, I didn't know this. She pulls up that night. She had she had gone to this concert. You know, uh, it was her and her and one of her family members. They had gone to this concert, and I didn't know she was gonna pull up. And so she calls me, and she's like, "Hey, I'm outside." Cause she asked me for my address, I'm thinking, oh, like she gonna pull up, at a, at another time, and but she pulls up that night, and it was like I think it was January 20, I think it was January 20th or January 23rd or something like that. So she pulls up, so we end up talking, and talking, and 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 we just talking about a whole bunch of different things, man. And it was like it was one of the moments where I knew I didn't have to force anything because it was already there, you know. Like I didn't have to force anything because the feelings were mutual at that point, right? Um, and then a month later, my brother dies, and that rocked me, you know. It rocked me to my core, you know. I remember the night before. My brother told me something because he died of respiratory failure, unexpectedly, and he said something. He was like, "Man," he was like, "Yo," he's like, "I love you, bro." You know, I like how he said it was like him saying goodbye. You know, and I didn't know that that was the last time I would ever talk to my brother. Yep. Um. So he told me, "Hey man, I love you, bro." And so and we had this handshake that we would do. It was a simple dap, and we dapped up, and I said, "Hey man, I love you too, dog." And that was the last time I talked to him. And mind you, me and this girl was already in a relationship at that particular time. And so when that night happened, I don't know why I called her. I didn't know how I dialed her number. I just called, and she picked up the phone. She's like, "Hey babe, what's up?" And I blurted out the words in between crying. Baby, my brother died. And she was like, wait, what? And mind you, because she had just met my mom and my brother that past weekend. My mom and my brother had gone out to a local baseball, the university baseball, game that Friday night. And so and it was really strange because it's like I had gotten home from the grocery store or whatever, and so I'm talking to the girl, and like she just want to come through and kick it, and she did, and it was late. It was like 9:30, 10 o'clock, right? Late for I mean, late for people in their 30s, man. If I was in my 20s, I probably would have been out just running around doing the muck. You know what I mean? Because anyway, so all that popped off, and she met my mom and my brother the Friday before he died, and my brother goes, he says something. He was like, "Yo, like, who is this girl?" I was like, "Man, you remember the girl from like 3 weeks ago? When I told you she dropped off pastries and whatnot?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Well, this is her." And then my brother goes, you got pastries with you today?" And she was like, "Oh, no, I don't. Well, the next time I'll bring some." And he was like, "Damn, I was really hoping you were two for two." I was starting to like you or something of that nature, right? She looks at me and she goes, "Babe, is he messing with me?" He's like, "Yeah, if he's talking to you, that means he's messing with you, you know? But it's that type of innocent, interactions that, my brother would have with people that would make a lasting impression. And I think where I lacked, my brother excelled at. Where um it was impossible for him not to make friends with people. It was impossible for him not to leave an impact on people. You know, he was Mr. Aloha where he would make friends with everybody. Where I'm the opposite where I'm like, no, I gotta fill you out. I gotta do X, Y, and Z because no. Um, so, but anyway, um, I think it's true, man. I think a lot of people they use therapy talk and not realizing that what they're saying to people is can be harmful too. Cause sometimes, man, it's like when you're dealing with people who don't know how to deal with the trauma and everything else too, is that it's really, really difficult because you're sitting there thinking like, oh yeah, it's X, Y, and Z. Oh yeah, it's you should do this, you should do that, do that. But it's like somebody who's in a relationship and all they've known is chaos, and then they finally get into a peaceful relationship, or they get into a relationship with a guy like, okay, like I'm not gonna force the conversation, I'm not gonna do X, Y, and Z. um I'm just gonna leave it where it's at. um and that's me. I don't force conversations. I don't sit there and think that, oh yeah, well, I'm gonna push the conversation because I'm spiraling or whatever it is. Like, no, I'm not. Like, I'm not. Like, just recently with you I had a date lined up with a girl, and because I'm single, um, I asked her, I think I asked her a couple questions because she had I asked her, yo, so like, and she was texting me and she said like, oh, like you can ask me some of those 20 questions here. So I did, and then I asked like, yo, like if you had 30 minutes alone with me, like what would, and I couldn't say no. What would we be doing? You know, and I didn't mean it in a sexual way. I just wanted to see like, okay, like if we was out by ourselves, and it was like, what would we be doing? And like, and since I couldn't say no, and then like she kind of did, and like the way she answered the question was like, oh, like I don't really know, you know. Um, all I know is that that you're not much taller than me. Okay, cool, whatever. And And then I asked her like, "Oh, so what type of questions do you have for me?" And she didn't respond. So a couple of days goes by, and I sent her another text message. I was like, "Yo, like, what are some of your love languages, and how do you communicate?" I didn't get a response, and I think we had a date set up for like Thursday or Friday or some shit like that. I didn't even bother to double check on the date because I'm like, okay, like if you're gonna leave me on red or leave me undelivered, cool. So I just deleted the contact information. I kept it moving, man, because it's like there's no point. There's no point of dealing with somebody who's in their 30s as well who doesn't know how to communicate. So and I've also had girls too in the past, but you are like literally, I think they're attractive. They obviously find me attractive, and then like for whatever reason they say they're not interested, right? I've literally had girls apologize to me for saying I didn't mean to come across rude or whatever. It's like no, it's cool, you know. Like you don't need to apologize for that. Like if you're not interested, that's fine. Like I'm not gonna hold it against you. Like I think it's weird when people do that shit. And I think that's strange because when you're dealing with people like that, or when they don't have the excuse me, they don't have the ability to communicate in the appropriate way, um, it shows up. And that's the one thing I noticed when I was talking to my therapist. And she asked me like, "Oh, so what made you inquire about going to therapy?" And so I mentioned my brother. I mentioned my relationship. That's why I was talking about my relationship and my brother in the beginning. I said like, yeah, and I said, well, first things first. Me and my brother we were born premature. We're twins. We were fraternal twins, and our birthdays are 2 days apart. And so our birthdays are in November, and then right after November, it's Thanksgiving. I mean, right after our birthdays, it's Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and then boom, it's Death Day. And I said that was a lot for me to deal with. It still is. And I told her like what I found is like all my coping mechanism skills that I had, they used to serve me great when I was younger. They don't serve me now. You know, like I'm not the type to sit there and talk about my emotions. I'm not the type to be like, oh yeah, I'm going through this, I'm going through that. You know, and I think that's what drove my now ex girlfriend away. You know, is the fact that it's like you're not dealing with somebody who's gonna just openly tell you what's going on in their head. And when one of my good college friends found out about my brother, she said the same thing too. She was like, "Yeah," she's like, "For as long as I've known you, you've never been that dude to sit there like and kill the mood, you know." And this is somebody I've known for like the last like 15, 16 years, you know. And she was like, "Yeah, like for as long as I've known you, you never brought the mood down. You never made, you never made it about yourself." So it's like I understand it because it's like that was never your nature, you know. And I thought that was interesting too because when you end up dealing with somebody like that, who just wants you to open up and like and it's like yo, like I don't feel comfortable right now doing that. And I think with her, like, I guess she looked at it as a form of rejection, you know. And there and like there was a lot of trauma bonding in that too. There was a lot of you know attachments that weren't healthy. My ex girlfriend said herself that me and her are toxic, but I think toxicity is a word that people love to throw around and don't really know what the word toxic means in a relationship Because just because somebody doesn't want to talk to you right now about what they're feeling doesn't mean that they don't want to talk about it. You know, just because somebody's going through something doesn't mean it's got to be verbalized 24/7. Because it doesn't, you know. Um, it doesn't have to be verbalized. And I think a lot of the times, especially women, women want their men to open up to them and do X, Y, and Z. And like a lot of the times, man, is like women will use what you tell them in confidence against you. You know, that's why most men don't tell people shit. You know, and it's not that we don't want to tell people. It's not that we don't want to tell the girl that we're sleeping with. Oh yeah, we going through X, Y, and Z, babe. But we don't want that to be used against us in a future argument. You know, I had a friend once. She was notorious. That's why I stopped being friends with her for using what people tell her in confidence against them. You know, or trying to paint herself as a victim in a situation. I'm like, yo, it's like if that was an issue, 6, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, however long ago it was, it's like, why didn't you bring it up then? Why are you bringing it up now? Like, what else are you trying to stockpile against me to use against me? Because it's like, if you were actually a true friend, you wouldn't harbor these resentments against me. And like that's what it is, man. It's like you can't get mad at somebody for, you know, them questioning you. Like, okay, like if this was such a problem, why not bring it up then? Why wait? You know, to it's almost like people want the other person to take accountability when the other person doesn't want to do that. And it's interesting too because I ran across this reel about from this lady. She was talking about how men are saying that women don't want to, men are saying that women don't want to take accountability. That's not true. Because a lot of the times, man, is like some women don't want to take accountability. It's like, and like there's tails in that, right? It's like the woman who always paints herself as a victim in every situation. I'm like, yo, it's really difficult for you to be a victim in things that you participate in knowingly. You know, it's like you can't be the victim in every situation, right? Another story. I had a friend of mine. She was engaged. The fiance called off the wedding. Her response was, "Oh yeah, well, like let me go through your phone." And she found a bunch of text messages and pictures and shit and videos and whatnot of him fucking around and her, doing X, Y, and Z. And I said, like, look, regardless of what you found, that man told you that he wanted to call off the wedding. It's not like you found anything, it's not like you was snooping. You wanted his phone and you went through the phone and you tried to justify your behavior. And the reality is like you have nobody to blame but yourself. And she was like, wait, what? I was like, yeah. It's like, where do you get off, like saying that, oh, he cheated on you, X, Y, and Z, when in reality, he's like, yeah, he did cheat on you. But at the same time, it's like, he also told you that he didn't want to get married to you. And like, I remember once we were talking and she said like, oh, well, we never once had an argument during our relationship. I'm like, you never argued at least once? About nothing? And then she was like, yeah, why? Because I'm like, I can understand why he cheated. And she was like, wait, what? I was like, think about it. It's like, you don't argue about nothing. That means you don't communicate. That means you don't have conversations. Or maybe when he did try to bring shit up, you shut down on him. You know? And I told her like, oh, it's like, that's not a flex. That just tells other people that you don't know how to communicate effectively. Or you don't know how to comprehend. Because I remember once when we was going through our shit And then she's like, well, if you want me to be the bad guy, that's fine. I was like, nobody wants you to be the bad guy. Like I just want you to take accountability for all the shit that you did. Like it has nothing to do with with account. That has nothing to do with you being a bad guy. It's like just take ownership for what you did. And cause I told her like, look, it's like you told me that you would never leave it, and you ended up leaving. It's like, how am I supposed to take that? How am I supposed to how am I supposed to take that when somebody tells me, oh yeah, like I won't leave this and this and that, and you end up leaving. Yeah, and you end up choosing a guy who's worse than your last boyfriend or worse than your last fiance, and then you want to sit there and think that we can be friends and we can talk about it. Like, no, I don't. No, like I told you how I felt, and then like this is what I wanted. It's like and like you don't get to put stipulations on it too. And it's like, and I told her, I remember telling her once, like, oh, it's like I don't need to hear this. She's like, what? I was like, I don't care about your relationship. That's a dude that you chose. That has nothing to do with me. And I'm sorry for whatever you're going through, but please don't talk to me about that. Like I don't need that in my life. And it's like, you know, and that was me in I think what my early 30s. You know, it's like late 20s, early 30s. And I told her like, yo, it's like you can't sit there and do all this shit and expect people to still be there for you. You know, it's not cool to use people because it's not. And I think that like that's the most crazy part about it is that a lot of people will sit there and like be like, oh, but X, Y, and Z. He's like, no, 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 nope, sorry, nope, because a lot of people will play victim in a situation when in reality, I don't want to say that they're a villain, but they definitely play the villain role well too. And it's always interesting too because accountability goes both ways. And it was funny because I kept watching these reels this morning about that same topic, and and this one sister this one sister had the reel, and she was talking about accountability, and then she's like, oh, well, she was talking about how men say X, Y, and Z, yada yada yada. Women don't want to take accountability, and women kind of say the same thing too, right? And the way I look at it is like, it's simple, man. It's like just own up to what you do. You know, it doesn't have to be something like crazy. It doesn't have to be something that's like just off the wall. It's like just own up to what you do. You know, it's like because a lot of the times people will say, "Oh, I'm a good person," this and this and that. I'm like, no, you're not. Because if you were a good person, you wouldn't feel the need to say that you are a good person. And a lot of people get triggered by that. And I look at it simply as this, like, yo, it's like, what are you getting triggered about? It's like, yeah, it sucks, but at the same time, it's like you don't get to pick and choose. Your behavior tells you what it is, bro. And I remember once somebody told me something after they said they was establishing boundaries with me too. And the very next day, they was texting me and calling and doing X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, you said 24 hours ago that you wanted nothing to do with me, that you were implementing boundaries. Why are you texting and calling me? Acting like we like nothing happened. And they were like, what? I was like, yeah. I was like, bro, you realize how this looks, right? This this looks like you have no boundaries. And this individual said like, oh well, I knew after the second text message that well, like where I stood with you. I'm like, don't do that. And they're like, what? They're like, what? I was like, yeah, don't do that because it's like now you're making yourself look like the victim or try and make yourself look like the victim, and it doesn't work. Like you yourself said that you wanted, that you were establishing boundaries with me doing X, Y, and Z. Stick to those boundaries. You know, stick to them. Like, stop thinking that like, oh, it's X, Y, and Z. Oh, it's yada yada yada. Oh, it's whoop de whoop. It's like no. It's like at the end of the day, it's like you don't get to implement, or you don't say that, oh, I'm implementing boundaries for whatever reason, and then you can't get mad when the same person that you implemented boundaries with isn't responding to you. And that's the difference between like ghosting somebody and like trying to force the conversation. It's like you can, if somebody says I'm implementing boundaries because I don't want to see you, I don't want to talk to you, yada yada yada, for whatever reason, okay, cool. Do not reach out back to that same individual and then get mad when that individual's like, because I'm looking at the phone like, the hell do you want? You know what I mean? Like, because literally, this is 24 hours later, you know? And that's when I started looking at the situation. I was like, yo, it's like, they don't, they don't know who they dealing with, huh? They don't. And I always think back and I think about certain things too, and I'm like, oh, it was like for somebody who's always talking about boundaries, but somebody who always talking about X, Y, and Z, you don't know how to implement anything, do you? You don't, you know? And the thing about me is like, you're not gonna sit there and make me feel a certain way. Like, okay, cool, it's whatever. It's like, am I gonna miss talking to you? 100%. Am I gonna force a conversation? No. Am I gonna keep it alive? No. Am I gonna wish you well? Yes. Am I gonna wish you, with everything else that you got going on? 100%. Am I gonna be a friend to you? No, I'm not. But the one thing I will do, if I ever do see you in public, I'll be like, hey man, how you doing? You know? Like I'm not gonna be a dickhead. I'm not gonna be I'm not gonna be a prick. I'm not gonna be do X, Y, and Z, because it's like that doesn't serve me. Like, why would I get upset with somebody else who just, you know, who's going through a difficult season? You know, summer, spring, winter, and fall. You know, a lot of the times people will go through shit and they don't think other people notice, but people do notice. And I think it's imperative to understand that it's okay to go through things. It's okay to have moments of doubt and have moments of fear. You know, it's okay to sit there and um and try to figure things out. But what's not okay is to sit there and think that everything is okay when you're not. You know, and that's what caused me to go to therapy, because like I was telling my therapist, it's like, yo, it was like I noticed the patterns that was going on with me. You know, every holiday season, or shit, it was even before that. Like, all these feelings and shit would pop up in October, because my dad's birthday is in October. Um, his death date is like literally 3 days after his birthday, so that fucks me up. Um, then it's my birthday, my brother's birthday, the holidays, and as I get older, I'm realizing like, yo, it's like I'm going to more funerals and weddings. I'm going to more funerals and birthday parties. And it's like, it's humbling, because it teaches you that, yo, the morality of that situation is what fucks with you. You know, the morality of you being on borrowed time is what fucks with me. And that's something I gotta deal with. That's something I have to just be mindful of. because I wasn't expecting to lose my brother at 35, man. I wasn't expecting to find my first healthy-ish relationship at 34, 35 years old. I wasn't expecting everything to happen the way that it happened. Am I grateful for it? Yeah, I am. I also wasn't expecting to lose my dad at cancer, diagnosed in September, dead, dead by October. I wasn't expecting to lose my dad at 20, 23, turning 24. I was expecting to lose a nigga at 50. I was expecting him, to like help, have him help me raise me, raise my kids if I have any kids. So I've been through a lot, man, and it's like I think it's when you sit back and you think about certain things, and it's like, yo, it's like the morality of the situation is like, dog, it's like value the time that you got with people, because you don't know how long you got. Value the time that you got with people, because you don't know how long you got. So accountability is important. Like everything else is important too. But the main thing is to value the time that you have, man. Because you don't know how long you got. All right, y'all. This is about 37 minutes of your life that y'all won't get back. Hope y'all keeping the 4Ps. Private player, positive pushing. I'll see y'all next week, Sunday. I love y'all. And like I always say, know your worth because you're better than what you are. All right, y'all. Peace.